I should not even be on this stage. And not just because of my questionable choice in apparel of shiny sequin jacket. No, it's because the vast majority of TEDx speakers are so different than me and my background. They come from very fancy families with very prestigious schools and educations. In my old neighborhood, Silicon Valley, we call this group pedigrees. Pedigrees. But the interesting thing is that most of us, 99.5% of us, are the opposite of pedigrees. We'll call this group mutts. Mutts. Now, I don't want to disappoint you this early in the presentation, but this is not going to be a talk about dogs. It's merely a metaphor for insiders and outsiders. And just because you didn't go to Harvard doesn't mean that I think that you're a mutt. That said, I am 100% mutt and proud of it. I wouldn't have it any other way. And just because being a mutt can actually help you to break through, to do things you didn't think that you could do, getting to this stage is only one of the challenges that I've had to face as I climbed to the top of the pedigreed world against all odds. Now you might be thinking to yourself, are you a pedigree or a mutt? Well, here's a clue. If you're wondering, you are not a pedigree. Pedigrees know, and they have the papers to prove it, and they tend to let you know right away about their fancy education and their very important family lineage. And using terms like family lineage. Look, I probably would too if I had that background. But they tend to also be very poised, very assured. They tend to make decisions for the rest of us. Now, mutts, on the other hand, the definitions are not quite as kind. The dictionary defines mutts as insignificant. Ouch. But data, actual research shows that we tend to be fast learners, we get along well with others, we come in all shapes and sizes, and because we don't take much for granted, we work harder for our confidence and our courage. Now, my story begins humbly enough. My mother emigrated into the United States after World War II as a nanny. Sure, she had her own papers, but they were called the alien registration card. My father was born to a teenage mother in Kentucky, which happens to be one of the most impoverished places in the United States, and where I got my southern name, Luann. My living conditions were once defined as dirt poor by one of my high school classmates after she came to visit, and then proceeded to tell the rest of the class. That was embarrassing, so I just never invited anyone over again. But the deck was stacked in my favor in so many ways. My family taught me about the importance of optimism, being able to see the possibilities in any challenge, the importance of confidence. My father was very much into the inner voice of, how do you think you did? Not compared to other people, not what other people think, but only you know. Did you try your hardest? Did you do your best? They also taught me about common sense and learning how to play the game. However, the way I learned about common sense was probably a little bit less traditional than others, as I learned it from gambling. My father had a little bit of a problem. Well, maybe it's a big problem, but I learned about poker face early on from learning poker at about 5 years old. And I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I learned what it is. I also learned about statistics from rolling the dice. And so for example, I know that when you roll a 7 times in a row, 100 times in a row, the odds that you're going to roll a 7 again are the same as they would be the first time you rolled. Now that comes in handy. I mean, it just tripped me out when I was a kid, but it comes in handy when you're grown up and you're taking things like business statistics. So when I was the first to graduate from college in my family, and I went to one of those large urban universities that caters to immigrant families like my own, and that also tend to cater to the first in the family to graduate, it was a day of great pride and great joy. And then when I took my education and moved from Florida to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, I was now in an alien world, just like my mother had been many years ago. And I had to learn a new language, words like IIT, MIT, INSEAD, and Oxford. Of course, I should have been a little bit more intimidated. But early on, one of my first interviews was with a small startup. And they told me directly, we're going to go with the less qualified candidate because they have a brand name education. It was important to the board of directors because they felt that they would help them to get more investor money. I was so grateful because now I'm learning the game, and I knew I would have to play with different tricks. I couldn't compete on education, but I could compete on accomplishments. So I helped large companies transition from old world analog to the new world of digital, from Honda to Starbucks to Pepsi. I started the first ever buzz marketing group at Yahoo, and basically which became the precursor to viral marketing, such as TikTok. You're welcome. And the hardest thing I did was have my own startup called Mix Marketing, with blue chip clients from Netflix to eBay. And when I could finally sleep at night, when I finally stopped having anxiety attacks after a few years, I got the call from the one company that I would shut my company down for, Google. The only problem was that they had actual restrictions, almost laws actually, against hiring someone like me. There were 18 schools that they recruited from, and my school certainly was not on the list. So it made for a very interesting interview process. One of my first interviews with Harvard, Stanford, that's how people identify by their educations, she asked me on the spot to come up with an idea for Gmail. And I said, I get paid for my ideas. I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from, but it turns out later that I got the only perfect score from her over the hundreds of interviews she'd done. But I found out later it was not because of, but in spite of my arrogant attitude, but it was because of the body of work that I was able to share with her of my accomplishments during that previous decade. Another interview with a very, very powerful, almost a founder of Google, she asked me, how do you approach your work? And so I responded, well, I do a lot of different experiments, I see what works, and I invest in those. This makes sense. She gets up, so excited, invokes her Stanford AI degree, gets up to the whiteboard, draws like hieroglyphics, charts, graphs, dots, polka dots, this whole thing that took up half my interview time, precious time, and came to the same conclusion that I had just come to. So I felt like this is great news. My common sense will carry me in this environment. Now, it took the company 10 months to hire me. And when I got there, I found out that my worst fear was true, that I was hired as an experiment. And I would say that it was a mixed result. In some ways, I was very successful. I accomplished a lot of groundbreaking work. But at the same time, I could have done a better job at my poker face and kept my yap shut quite a bit more. It's not easy being an outsider. In fact, I was born one right from the beginning. I was born over 5 kilos, 10 pounds, right from the start. Biggest baby in the nursery, just born, looking ready for kindergarten. And my father, I hear, says, well, I didn't hear, I heard about it, says to my young grandmother, Ma, do you think she's going to be a giant? Kind of. And so I've also been the oldest person in the room. I've been the least smart person in the room, but my common sense is going to carry me. I've also been the only woman in the room. Love it. Bring it on. I'm going to help pioneer. And I've also been, of course, the only non-pedigree. As an example, on the first day at Google, they invite you to log on to the alumni network. There you can look for other people that went to your alma mater so that you can build your network and will help you to learn the ropes at the company. So when I log on, I get a big 0. No one has been to my school. Again, I loved it. Here I am, I'm paving the way, able to make change. I never felt like a victim. I only felt very, very fortunate. Plus, I challenge anyone in Silicon Valley that has had a better ROI, return on investment, on their education. In addition, I feel like I'm in a great group. It's a great group, us outsiders, and I've met quite a few of them. Sir Richard Branson, I worked for him for almost 10 years. What an honor. He's actual royalty that's gone rogue. Then there's Bill Clinton, man's best friend, a lot of women too. And Bart Cuban. I will tell you, I have never seen anyone so happy as when Yahoo purchased his company. He was filled with joy. He bought drinks for the whole entire company. But, so to end, because it can be a little bit lazy, I asked ChatGPT, when do outsiders become insiders? And the response I got was, when their differences no longer affect the way that they interact with each other. As usual, I think I can do better. I think it's when the differences actually inspire each other and don't divide. So my experience helped me to do things that I didn't think were possible. In fact, to do things I didn't know existed, like the board of directors positions that I've held. When you start from a lower expectation, you can actually progress faster. And when you show progress, that builds confidence. And when you have confidence, that builds courage. And you're going to need that courage to accomplish the things that you're going to need to stand out. And I'm not saying to change. Being an outsider is an amazing experience. And it's something that separates you, and it's something to wear as a badge of honor. Now, the good thing is that, the hard thing is that in order to break in, it will require quite a bit of work. So the question is it worth it? 100% yes. When you break in, it's a chance to be challenged, it's a chance for creativity, it's a chance for freedom, it's a chance for power, which you can use for good. It's lucrative, but most importantly, it's the opportunity to dream big, to do things on a bigger stage with the resources that you need. You have no limitations. And the other good news is that the rules are changing. Google no longer hires based on those top-tier schools. They have decided that behavior is a better indicator. So things like leadership, getting along well with others, or things like problem solving, using your common sense, are what they use for criteria now. So, what about you? Are you a mutt? If so, wear it with pride. What does it mean when you were born a mutt? Nothing. You can do anything, you can go anywhere. And when you succeed, then people will look up to you like no one else. But most importantly, you will look up to yourself. Thanks, Dad. Thank you.